Hello everyone, welcome to the 4th Custom Mail-In Tournament Drag Race Edition. For the first round of this tournament, we shall introduce Space Cadet, Leo, Iceman, and Killer Kowalski. Kowalski in particular, I'm sure, is looking to redeem himself after the last big tournament, and it looks like they're going to do that as they start off finishing in first. So they will set the fastest time record for now, sitting at 3.04. With a lot of these drag races, many of the people who win almost never lose until later on. But sometimes that's not always the case, and with how close these races get, you never can tell. For heat number 2, they're switching lanes. Let's see if Killer Kowalski can keep this going. They're already in a much better position than they were before, and it looks like they're going to get that win, although Iceman was hot on his trail. Was he able to get faster than 3.04? No, he was actually slightly slower, but ever so slightly. I have no doubt in my mind that somebody at some point will break that 3-second mark, but if they do, it's likely not going to be by much. Now we have 2 more heats with this particular group. Let's see how they do. Killer Kowalski is in one of the middle lanes. Iceman is even closer to him this time around, but Killer Kowalski is pulling away just enough to secure the 3rd win. And somehow he's getting ever so slightly slower each time. But considering how small that margin is, you can almost not tell. Also, ladies and gentlemen, at the time of recording this, there is a hurricane emergency in the southern region of the U.S. So if you're down there, please stay. He's looking to stay undefeated. Can he do it? It looks like he will. An even bigger margin from the other racers this time around. But Iceman definitely kept him on his toes for sure. And there you go, 3.04. So far, I believe, the quickest time we've seen out of any of them. A valiant effort all around. But it is Killer Kowalski advancing while staying undefeated. And now for the second round. And we have Jason Dean, Tito, Astro 9R, and Arlo. Some fan favorites in this group for sure, and there goes Arlo taking off, leaving everyone in the dust without an issue. There's a clear-cut winner this time, and it looked like he was actually faster than Killer Kowalski, but that doesn't seem to be the case. But a lot of times you can often tell who's going to win by the time they get to the bottom of that slope. And for Arlo, it looked to be even more apparent before they even got to that point. Let's see if Arlo can do it again or if that was just a fluke. They start the race. Arlo actually doesn't have as big of a lead. However, he's still the clear winner, with the other 3 trailing a bit. So that brings him to 2 consecutive wins, finishing with 3.08 this time. These other the other 3 racers, I don't know why I said 2. They definitely have their work cut out for them if they want to catch up to Arlo and keep him from advancing and knocking them out. Can any one of them pull off a miracle and get in front of him? Immediately starting this race, Astro 9R, Tito, they just could not catch up. But it seems like Arlo is slightly slower than Killer Kowalski on average. But if they ever go face-to-face, I would not be surprised if one gave the other some serious contention. But yes, Tito, Astro 9R, and Jason Dean are pretty much out of it at this point because 3 consecutive wins automatically stamps your spot in the next round. Now Arlo is looking to stay undefeated. Jason Dean was next to him until they got to the bottom of the slope, but Arlo took off and grabbed the win. So Arlo will be moving on, joining Killer Kowalski in the undefeated category, though not securing the fastest time. And I believe we'll have at least 2 more groups going today. Let's see who is in group number 3. We have Rob Maverick, Ricky Bobby, Wild Willie G, and Craigster Sr. All 4, I believe, are veterans in these tournaments, and one actually fell quickly behind while the other 3 stayed together. Normally, that's the other way around, but that wasn't the case here. And this seems to be a slower group because the fastest one out of the four finished with a 3.15. That was actually Rob Maverick, followed closely by Craigster and Weil. Ricky Bobby seems to have a few screws attached to the top of the vehicle. I'm not sure if that's actually helping them right now. But these finishes are familiar as they all finish in the same order this time around. But yeah, considering the times we've already seen by the likes of Killa and Arlo, these times aren't the greatest. So Rob Maverick, while finishing in first for the second time and greatly increasing their odds of moving on, they still have their work cut out for them if they're going to go up against someone like Arlo or Killa, or someone else that might pull off fast times such as that. But he is going to get that third win, so he will stamp his way into the next round of this tournament, finishing slightly quicker this time with a 3.12. That is slightly better, but at this point you definitely want to try and finish below 3.1. Now Rob Maverick can breathe a little bit easier. So let's see if he takes that into account in this race. They start, and actually Wild Willie G looked like he might have had a slight edge over him for just a moment, but quickly lost it and almost derailed as he went over the finish line. And oddly enough, 3.11 is, I believe, the quickest time in this particular group, which is a bit of a concern, all things considered. But with that in mind, Rob Maverick is the one moving on, and so far, anyone who has won a race has not lost yet. Now we have, I believe, one more group that has D-Boom, Sailor Moon, Zizzer Prime, and Ash. Any Sailor Moon fans in here, let me know who your favorite character is. But it doesn't look like it's good for Sailor Moon in this race, because I believe they were the slowest racer on the track. And a 3.07, that is a bit better. Let's see if they can go even quicker or slightly slower like some of the other races have been so far. But that winner was D-Boom, and they're giving a tie to Zizzer and D-Boom, actually. Zizzer and Ash. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. But they begin the race again, and Sailor Moon quickly falls behind, and it looks like D-Boom will grab another victory, and there will not be a tie between Zizzer and Ash this time around. I don't know why it seems most of the time these racers finish slightly slower with each race. It could be because they're just so pumped up to start the tournament and then they use a lot of energy early on, which could be dangerous actually. But now we have our third heat. D-Boom is just one victory away. It looks like he's going to be able to do it, although Zizzer and Ash are trying to make something happen, but they can't. So D-Boom is now 3 wins in. He is moving on with 3.08 once more. Right now, I believe the fastest time we've seen is 3.04. That was done by Killa Kowalski. So now these other 3 are looking to make something happen. Even if they can't move on, they want to at least try to stop D-Boom from being undefeated. But that doesn't look like it's going to happen, because by the time they got to that slope, D-Boom started pulling away, and he grabbed that 4th win. And that was a 3.06. That is a great time. He's definitely in contention for future parts of the tournament. But that means we have gone 4 rounds, 4 groups, and none of the winners have lost a race yet. So we'll see how that comes into play in the future. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you for the next round of the tournament. Of our 4th Custom Mail-In Tournament Drag Race Edition. For today's first round, we will introduce Gayla, Rob, Tabo, and Rex Cars. If I mispronounced any of those names, please let me know. But for now, it looks like Tabo is going to take that first win. Is it Tabo or Tebow? I'm not sure. But they do get the first victory of today, finishing with 3.13, about a 1/10 of a second slower than our current fast time of 3.04, held by Killa Kowalski, who, by the way, seems to be in the middle of a decent redemption arc, as they did not do so well in one of the more recent tournaments, and now they're trying to get their name back on top. The for now it's Tabo who has the lead once more. Gets a clear-cut second victory, and they finished with 3.12 this time. It is very difficult to get the fastest time in drag races like these, because most of the times will be pretty close to each other. In fact, almost all of them have been within about half a second. But Tabo just needs one more win, and they will move on automatically. And it looked like they had a slight bit of competition from Rex Cars for just a moment, but as they got to the bottom of the slope and took off, Tabo grabbed another win. So they will be moving on, and the other three, their journey ends here. Yeah, a lot of these times are going to be very close to each other, and if someone does break the speed record, it's not going to be by much. But if somebody can break 3 solid seconds, they are in a great position to win it all. Now Tabo is looking to join the extending list of undefeated racers, and they are going to do it. 4 consecutive wins. Not quite one of the fastest racers we've seen. But as I always say, if you at least move on, you will have plenty of opportunities in the future, hopefully, in order to improve your time. But Rex Cars and Gala actually tied, but that doesn't matter because they will not be moving on. But in today's second round, we have the Kid, Lucky, Rico the Robot, and Rebel Racers, all of which I am sure are very familiar to some of you. It looks like Rebel is the one who gains the first win here, finishing with a 3.08. That is actually an improvement. At this point, I would say if you can finish below 3.1, then you should feel a bit more comfortable going forward. Now, that doesn't seem like the most aerodynamic vehicle, but we've definitely had quite a few surprises in previous races and previous tournaments for sure. It looked like Rebel Racer actually got a slightly slow start, but after that first half second, they gained the speed they needed and grabbed the second win, finishing around the same time as they did the first time. In most of these drag racers, whoever finishes in first is likely to do so for most of the time. But sometimes we get a little bit of a switch up, and that keeps things interesting for sure. Now Rebel Racer just needs another victory to automatically progress, and it looks like they're going to do that. And they will! Rebel Racer is going to move on, and now they are in line to try and be undefeated. Or up to won a race, has not lost one yet, which will make things interesting when a lot of them meet face-to-face on the track in later stages of the tournament. Lucky, on the other hand, is not exactly living up to their name, but if it's any consolation, I love the design. And for a second, I thought that was Rebel Racer who got a slow start, but no, they are out in front yet again, and they grab that 4th win to stay undefeated. And 3.08, I believe, was their individual fastest time. So they're still well in contention to win the whole thing if they're careful. That concludes the second group for today. So far, 2 people have moved on and not lost a race. Will it remain the same for the next couple of rounds? For in the third round, we have NZ Racing, Tasman, Lone Wolf 3, and Old Sarge. Makes you wonder what happened to the first 2 Lone Wolves. But that may have just answered our question, because Lone Wolf is separated from the other 3, but not in a good way. Finishing almost in 4 seconds. Which doesn't seem like a lot, but in comparison to the rest of these racers, that is not good at all. It is actually Tasman who grabs that win, and is the one in contention to join that list of not losing a single race. A great start to be sure, although these other 2 are not too far behind, so they gotta stay on their toes, or wheels, I guess, in this case. And look at that, a 3.16. A lot of these races are decided by a very small margin. But as we can see, those small margins can make all the difference. Now Tasman is one race away from moving on without having to need a fourth race necessarily. And they get a great start out of the gate, going down the hill, through the straightaway, and across the finish line without anyone giving him any trouble. Oh my goodness. Lone Wolf is practically tight-roping that 4-second mark. But Tasman is going to be moving on. I believe that was 3 races. Now there's just one more. Can Tasman be the next undefeated racer? It looks like they're going to be, because they took off and left everyone not necessarily in the dust. At least not all of them, but far enough ahead to make it clear who the winner was. That is definitely Tasman. So now we have one group left for today. We'll see if the streak of undefeated racers can keep going. Or will it stop here? And we have Sparky Racer, Kent Ketchum, Anita Lee, and J-Bo. And it looks like we have our winner. It looked like we had one racer out in front, and then it switched around a bit, and they finished with a 3.08. Which is a pretty decent time, all things considered. Again, right now, finishing under 3.1 is a little bit more comfortable than not. And that was Anita Lee. It looked like J-Bo at the beginning was going to get that lead, and then Anita comes out of nowhere, gets the burst of speed they need to get the win. Can they do that again? It looks like they will, although J-Bo wasn't making it easy for them at first. And Anita Lee finished with a 3.07, even closer to the fastest time we've seen. You see what I mean? How close these races can get, so never say someone is out until somebody gets 3 consecutive wins, or that there's no way for someone to catch up in general. Anita Lee is eyeing that finish line, trying to get that win to secure the victory. And they are going to get it as they pull away once more. So they will move on. And they'll definitely need more opportunities to improve as they're finishing now with a 3.12. You could be a very speedy racer, but if you don't control your vehicle very well and bounce off the walls or what have you, it can really slow you down. But J-Bo and Kent Ketchum, they are trying to get something done here, but they're struggling to do so as Anita Lee starts off relatively even with them, but they take off yet again and get that victory. So now we are at 3.1, which is about the average time that Anita has pulled up overall. Let's see if they can pull off some of those faster times later on in the tournament, as they will be the one to progress. And with that, that is all the groups we have for today. These are your current group advancing, and we'll see more in the near future. To our 4th custom mail-in drag race tournament. This is day number 3, so let's see who competes in the first round. Johnny Ocean, Mr. Dark, Hefe, and Isa Khan. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that correctly, and it is Isa Khan who finishes in first with a time of 3.09. So far, our fastest time is still Killa Kowalski, who finished with a 3.04. And Killa is one far who have not lost a single race. So far, everyone who has won a race has not lost one. And so far, Isa Khan is going to be the one competing to keep that streak going. And it looks like they will do it as they finish in second, or rather finish in first for the second time. My apologies. They definitely were cutting it close as they were going down the ramp, but once they hit that flat edge heading towards the finish line, they got the lead they needed to sit a little more comfortably. Now for Heat 3, can Isa Khan keep it going? Mr. Dark has been making them a little nervous when the race first begins, but Isa Khan keeps getting that lead. along with the win. They're finishing around the same time every time. And they are going to be the one to progress since they have more points than anybody else, and no one can possibly catch up to them now, even if Issa were to get 0 points. But they are going to get that 4th win, so they are going to keep the streak going. And Issa Khan's moving on with a solid 3.1 finish. Although in drag races, even the smaller margins will seem huge due to how close these races can be. Now for the second round, we have Matt McNear, Endcount, Lero, and Sneaky Bob. Sneaky Bob has had a reputation of popping up out of nowhere and taking the lead when no one expects it, so I guess they are living up to their name. And it is Sneaky Bob getting the win. And they have a time of I think that was 06? Let's take a look again. It's 05, actually. So they were just short of taking over Killer Kowalski's. I can do it. But it is going to be Sneaky Bob. Let's take a look. 3.06 this time. They are just on the cutting edge of at least tying with Killer Kowalski, if nothing else. So even if they're not sneaking their way to victory, because they have clearly been in first each time so far, but maybe they can sneak their way up to the fastest time in the tournament so far. But this time was actually a little slower. That pressure may be getting to them a little bit. But Endcount definitely gave them a run for their money, as they finished just 1/100th of a second slower than they did. But Sneaky Bob is going to move on automatically. Now they're just trying to keep that undefeated streak going, and they will. And they finish with a time of what? It is a 3.08 again. So they were awfully close to matching Killer Kowalski, but so far Kowalski keeps that speed record. Well, we have another undefeated racer. And now for the third round, which we have Banjo, Uncle Elvis, Ben Dover, and Big Daddy Craig. And here comes Banjo with the lead, and they get the first win of this group. And I'm always curious as to what time they have. It is a 3.15, so this is a little bit slower than Killer Kowalski or some of the racers we just had. But they put themselves in the position to keep the undefeated streak alive. And it looks like they're going to do that again, because the other three are staying side by side, but Banjo was able to pull in front of them and get win number 2. Yeah, if you want to see a lot of undefeated racers, then come to these drag races for sure, which will make it very interesting when those undefeated racers come together and face each other. Here comes Banjo again. Can they do it again? Uncle Elvis was right next to them for a moment, but Banjo pulled away to get a 3rd consecutive victory, finishing with a 3.14. And it's actually Ben Dover who's been finishing in a different position every time. And can Banjo get that 4th win? It looks like they will. So that is another name to add to the list, finishing slightly quicker now with a 3.12. You can see some of those other racers back there watching and seeing what their competition is going to look like as they move forward. But now for the 4th and I believe final round for today, but I could be wrong. And we have Rocket, Velocity, Bear Chomp, and Uncle Fokker. And look at this, Uncle Fokker takes off, leaving everyone in the dust. And they finish with a 3.08. That time is a little bit familiar as of today's races. While Bear Chomp is the one getting chopped. And Rocket is trying to make something happen, but so far, despite their name being Rocket, It is Uncle Fokker who is taking off. So Uncle Fokker now has 2 wins to their name. They're just looking for those other 2 in the upcoming races. So now they've switched lanes. Let's see if that makes it different. It doesn't always. But there goes Uncle Fokker again. Bear Chum falling behind very quickly, somehow not able to maintain their speed. And Uncle Fokker gets another win. They haven't been able to match that 3.08 time they put in the first race. But now they just need 1 more. And the idea of anyone who's won a race not losing one yet will keep going. And it looks like that will happen. Uncle Fokker finishes all 4 times in first place, not quite getting the fastest time, but moving on gives you more opportunities to do so in the future. Doing slightly better that time, so Uncle Fokker will be the next to move on. And this is your lineup so far. Thank you all so much for watching. See you for the next video. Drag Race Day 4. This is the 4th custom tournament for it, and our first round today will introduce Rag-In Ricky, Puff, Dex Hendricks, and Bolo Brown. If you've been tuning in to the other tournament going on right now for the custom mail-in tourneys, you'll know that Dex Hendricks represents Blue Line, and they have been crushing it. And so far, it looks like they're going to be doing the same here, getting an easy first victory. Also, is it just me, or does everything look like it's moving in slow motion? Well, let's see what kind of time Dex was able to pull off. It was a 3.06. Currently, the fastest time is still held by Killa Kowalski, who is our first undefeated racer of the entire tournament. And so far, as of right now, anyone who has won a race has not lost one yet. That's going to spice things up for sure once the roster is filled and we move on to the next phase of this tournament. And only 1 person moves on out of each group. So we'll see what happens with these other racers going up against Dex Hendricks. Even before they get to the bottom of the hill, Dex Hendricks gets the lead and he is pulling away even more so. It is really just a fight for second place. But Dex Hendricks gets that next win. 1 more and they automatically progress. Finishing 3.08 this time around. Whereas everyone else is finishing about 1/5 of a second behind him. In races like these, the results are usually pretty consistent. But every once in a while, things get switched up a little bit, or something happens that nobody expects, and that can really throw a wrench into things for sure. Now Dex has 2 wins, looking to get that 3rd. And so far they haven't had much contention from the other racers, so they don't want to get too cocky yet. They actually start off slightly behind, but by the time they get to the bottom of the hill, Dex Hendricks takes the lead and pulls away once more. And now we have a little bit more separation with the other 3, but the results are bound to be just about the same. But it looks like Dex Hendricks is finishing ever so slightly slower each and every time. But the fact of the matter is, they've been finishing under 3.1 for each race so far, so that is very promising for later. Because now they do have that 3rd win, guaranteeing them a spot in the next phase. But it was actually Puff who managed to get 2nd place that time, taking it from the others, Bolo Brown and Rag-In Ricky. Not that it really matters at this point. Now they just want to try and stop Dex Hendricks from staying undefeated, but unfortunately that doesn't look like it will happen. Puff is trying to finish in anything but last here. I don't think they were able to pull it off, however. I want to say Bolo Brown kept that from happening and stayed in 3rd. Well, Dex Hendricks finished slightly better this time with 3.07. So it is definitely a valiant effort by the other three racers, but Blue Line has a reputation for doing really well in these tournaments, almost consistently. One tournament after another, even if they don't end up winning, they usually get pretty far. So Dex Hendricks is the next to stay undefeated. Not quite the fastest time, but still. And now in this heat we have Goku, Mediocre Mike, Benny Blanco, and Big Cat. And despite being the strongest in the universe, or at least one of them, this is actually kind of lore accurate with Goku, as he is not necessarily known to be the best driver in the galaxy. If you've seen the driving episode or episodes in Dragon Ball, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And he ended up finishing in last. Maybe he'll get a boost from that and perform better in the later races. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit of a Dragon Ball fan. But our winner finished with a 3.14, not quite the time I'm looking for, but that was Big Cat who got that win. So let's see if they can keep it up. Race number 2, here they go. Goku actually falls behind almost immediately, starting off out of the gate a little slower, but now he's trying to grab third. However, Big Cat is able to get a second consecutive victory. Like I said, it's often pretty consistent. But for all we know, one of these races might even have a favorite lane or something to that effect that'll give them the motivation they need to pull off a surprise that no one could have ever foreseen. But Big Cat finishing at 3.14 yet again. I don't think we've had any racers so far finish at the same time all 4 races, but some of them have gotten awfully close. Now they take off for the third race. Is it Big Cat in front? Not quite, actually. He's in second. Is he about to be dethroned? The first non-undefeated racer? That is the case. We've had about 12, actually 13 if you count Dex Hendricks, undefeated racers in a row. But this time, that streak has finally come to a close. So now things just got a little bit more interesting. Because Big Cat, looking to stay undefeated, now no longer is. So he's going to have to be on his guard, as Benny Blanco is the one to dethrone him. If Benny Blanco can do that again, and we end up in a tiebreaker, things will have an unexpected twist. And it looks like that might actually be the case. Benny Blanco has a nose on him. Is it going to be enough? It is hard to tell from this angle. I want to say Big Cat was able to get enough speed in his wheels to just get his nose in front of Benny Blanco. But we're going to have to check the replay and then check with the judges to see what their determination, or rather what they determine. That was really close. But they are giving it to Big Cat, and as a result, they will move on. That is about as close as you can get without moving on, so apologies to Benny Blanco. But now in this group we have Lone Wolf, Frank N. Steen, Numbskull, and Nomo. Some of these races have been doing well in the other parallel tournament going on right now. Some of them not so much. Numbskull, however, is the one to take the win in this particular group of racers. And they finish with a 3.15. That's about where the other group was finishing before. Usually around 3.14. But as I always say, if you can at least move on, you have more chances to do better. And so far, that distinction seems to be going to Numbskull, although Lone Wolf wasn't too far behind them. I'm sure Frank Insteen, with that plow on the front, would like to push someone over, but given the fact that the lanes are separated the entire way through, that doesn't seem to be happening. And you also may notice that Frankenstein's front and back pieces are completely missing. If you've been keeping up with the previous, or not the previous, the parallel tournament going on with the bigger track, then you'll understand why. But if you don't know, I would recommend going checking that out, because it actually was quite a bit of a shocker for Frankenstein. We're not sure if those missing pieces are helping or hindering them, but they are not performing all too well right now. And Numbskull is the one who has 2 wins under their belt. But again, Lone Wolf has not been making it easy. Numbskull is actually around the same as Nomo, but then he pulls away. And if it wasn't for part of that track being orange, along with the black top of that vehicle, it would almost be hard to spot Numbskull, because he blends in with the green part of the track. But Numbskull gets that 3rd win, so they will automatically move on. But like with the last group, is someone going to get dethroned here? Some of these, you can usually start to tell who's going to win right after they get close to the bottom of the ramp. But that is not 100% true. So here we go. Numbskull is trying to keep the streak alive. So far they are in front, not by much, but they are slowly getting distance between them and the rest of the pack. And they get that win, so they will stay undefeated. And I believe there will be one more group after this one. Possibly 2. But Numbskull stays undefeated. That being said, they finished above 3.1 every time, I'm pretty sure. Meaning that some of the faster ones, like Killer Kowalski, might still mop the floor with them, as it were. But now we have our 4th round for today. And it has Wes Cosen, Dusty Miles, Gary Greg Pearson, and Gale Force. Some really cool names, by the way. Dusty Miles has been a popular / fan favorite in the Races and Fun roster, and it looks like that may stay true as they grab the win. Meanwhile, Wes Cosen was somehow able to get enough of a bounce so that their front end was grinding along the side of the railing. We're not quite sure what happened. We'll see it in the replay. Maybe there was a bit of debris on the track, or maybe there was just a little bump that they did not expect. Yes, something about going over that finish line caused their front end to pop up for just long enough that they ended up on the side of the railing. Thankfully that happened after they finished though, so it did not affect their results. Into race number 2. Wes Cosen was still able to finish in 2nd after all that. Now they're trying to stop Dusty Miles. And it looks like he's closing the gap. I don't know if he'll have enough distance. He will not. But he actually kept Dusty Miles on their toes. They were almost side by side by the time they got there. And if Wes Cosen had just slightly started better, then the results may have been different. But for now, Dusty Miles keeps that title of undefeated. And it's entirely possible that of all 12 groups, actually all 16 I think, out of all 16 groups that we've seen, we might end up with only one racer that moved on that has actually lost a race. But for now, Dusty Miles is in front of everybody else, looking to get the 3rd win, and they will. It was a little bit more definitive this time, and all 4 racers were actually just about evenly split. But Dusty Miles is moving on. Wes Cosen wasn't able to stop them, unfortunately. But this is a smaller tournament, if you will. So hopefully it won't hit as hard. especially since the racers can't hit each other. Yeah, around that 3.1415 mark has been very popular in today's groups. But we'll see if Dusty Miles can improve on this final race, now knowing that they have breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that they have automatically progressed. And they do get that win. I don't know if it was faster, though. And I could be wrong, but it looked like Dusty Miles also ended up grinding on the side of the railing for just a moment. That could have just been the angle or something else entirely. But we'll check the replay to see if that actually happened or if my eyes are just going crazy. I guess on that particular lane, there's something to cause racers to bump up into the air and slide along the railing, but Dusty Miles was able to get back down with all four wheels on the ground. But Dusty Miles has moved on, and here's your roster that is advancing with only one of them, that being Big Cat. Everyone, welcome to the 4th Custom Drag Race Tournament. This is the final round, and here is your roster. And one of these people is going to win today. In the very first round of the finals, let's see who will run. It is Sneaky Bob, Issa Khan, Arlo, and Killa Kowalski. Killa currently has the time to beat with 3.04. If someone can beat that today, that'll be quite the impressive feat. But for now, Killa Kowalski takes the first win. Right before this race started, all but one racer in the finalists were undefeated. But now that Killa Kowalski has won this race, another 3 of those racers will not have that distinction. So now Killa Kowalski is not only trying to stay in first, but also trying to beat his own time. And in the second race, it looks like Arlo had the slight edge over Killa, but Killa managed to get a burst of speed somewhere, allowing him to get a second win. Getting a third automatically means progression to the next part of the tournament. Or the next part of the finals, I should say. Yeah, these racers are bound to get a lot closer now that these are the fastest of the fast going up against each other. Killa Kowalski is just looking for a third win here to get another sigh of relief. And so far, they're going down the hill. It looks like Killa had something going, but here comes Arlo taking the win away from him. Now no one out of this group is going to come through this undefeated. Very impressive by Arlo. I want to say, out of the 16 races that are here, one will come out of each set of 4, and then those 4 will decide who the ultimate winner is. So Killa Kowalski is still in the best position to move on. Arlo will need to finish in front of Killa Kowalski to keep his hopes of being in this tournament alive, and that's not going to happen. Killa Kowalski gets the win, and thus will enter the top 4. Congratulations to Issa, Sneaky Bob, and Arlo, though, for making it all the way to the finals. And look how close these times are, all off by just about 0.01 or slightly more. But Killa Kowalski takes the first spot in the top 4. And now for the second round, which will have Uncle Fokker, Banjo, DeBoom, and Rob Maverick. As the race begins, it looks like Uncle Fokker started off slightly behind, but then suddenly gets a lot faster and gets that first victory. Not quite breaking 3.1, but very close. It looked like he was starting to slow down, and all of a sudden he just sped up significantly. Realizing that if he doesn't get his act together, I guess, then he was going to be out of this tournament. And now for race number 2, they've switched lanes. Let's see if that makes any difference. Here they come yet. And something about Uncle Fokker, once he reaches that flat part of the track, he suddenly just gets a burst of speed out of nowhere that really helps him stay in front of the rest of the pack. But he's able to get the win. And now he's just one away from guaranteeing his spot in the top 4. Here we go. Race number 3. Is Uncle Fokker going to be able to do it? It looks like he will as he gets that burst of speed yet again. So Uncle Fokker will be the one to progress. The other 3 have one more race before their time in this tournament is over. Yeah, from this angle, you can't always tell who's in the lead until they get closer to the finish line. But that can just make it all the more interesting. And apparently, Rob Maverick and D Boom finished at the same time in second place on that last one. Not that it overly matters at this point, unfortunately for them. But that is not a common occurrence. But Uncle Fokker does get that 4th win, so he will stay undefeated going into the top 4. So we'll have at least 1 out of the 4. Possibly 2 more, depending on how the next 2 groups go. But congratulations to Uncle Fokker, and a pat on the back to the other 3. And now for the 3rd round, and we will have Rebel Racer, Tebow, Big Cat, and Dex Hendricks. Yeah, some interesting cases here. Dex Hendricks represents Blue Line Racing, who has been an absolute beast in recent tournaments, and they're looking to get another victory here. And we also have Big Cat, who is the only person in these finals who went into it not being undefeated. And they're certainly not now, and the same goes for Rebel and Tebow now. Blue Line Racing is very difficult to beat, apparently, especially in recent tournaments. And it looked like Rebel Racer was going to be able to get a win from them. But Rebel slowed down, or maybe Dex sped up or something, because now Dex Hendricks has 2 consecutive victories. 1 more and they will be in the top 4. And a 3.24 out of Tebow. That is one of the slower times we've seen as of recent. But the fact that they are in the top 16 is definitely still something to be proud of. And now for this 3rd race, Rebel Racer once again had a slight lead over Dex for just a moment. But once they headed into the flat straightaway, heading towards the finish line, all Dex was doing was speeding up. And he almost beat the record. I think Killer Kowalski still has it, because his time at one point in this tournament was 3.04. But now Dex Hendricks has that 3rd consecutive win, so he will be in the top 4. And he's looking to stay undefeated, but Rebel Racer somehow had a huge lead over them. And it was apparently big enough that even though Dex Hendricks was speeding up, he could not catch him. So not even Dex Hendricks is going to be undefeated by the end of this tournament. But they are moving on, so they will have a chance to redeem themselves to a degree. Now 1 spot is left to be filled, and it'll be filled by one of these 4, Anita Lee, Tasman, Dusty Miles, and Numbskull. And as the race begins, it looks like Numbskull might have a slight edge. I think they got it. And something off the end of the track just seemed to fall. We're going to have maintenance check in on that. But the victory is Numbskull's, but let's see by how much. They had 3.11, and Anita had 3.13, I think. So very close. Let's see if Numbskull can do it again. Now on the lane closest to the camera, heading towards the finish line. It looked like they were slightly behind, but they got the speed they needed to get the 2nd win. So 2 down, and 1 to go to move on, 2 to go to stay undefeated. So far, only 1 person out of 3 that are moving on is undefeated. Numbskull could make it 2 that are and 2 that are not. They just need to finish in first 2 more times. Switching lanes again, heat number 3. The race begins. They're going down the hill. Numbskull is actually in the back of the pack, but here he comes out of nowhere and grabbing that victory again. Definitely gave some Numbskull fans a scare for a second, but they pulled it out in the end, allowing them to take the final spot in the top 4. Although that is pretty close. We have two 3.14 times, so they'll both get 5 points. So I don't know if that necessarily guarantees that Numbskull will move on, but it's definitely making it a lot easier. But look at this, Numbskull wasn't able to get that burst of speed this time, and I think he finished in 3rd. Or maybe he tied for 2nd. But that was quite the interesting ending to that. So out of the 4 that are moving on, with Numbskull barely holding on to that spot, only one person is still undefeated, and I believe that is Uncle Fokker. But one of these 4 will be your ultimate winner. And so far, it looked like Killer Kowalski was holding on to the lead, but now Dex Hendricks is looking to redeem himself a little bit after losing that undefeated title, and now has 1 victory under their belt. They just need 2 more, and they will be the ultimate winner, causing Blue Line to have another championship under their belt. We're starting to lose track of how many times Blue Line has won. But that just shows how formidable an opponent they are to all the other racers around them. And look at this again. Dex Hendricks started off in the back and then just kept speeding up until they got in front of everybody else. That is 2 victories for Dex Hendricks. 1 more, and they will be your champion for this tournament as well. So here we go. This next race could decide it all, potentially. Will Blue Line have another tournament under their belt? Or will somebody take it from them? Here they go. Dex Hendricks gets the lead, gets the win. Ladies and gentlemen, Dex Hendricks, Blue Line Racing, is your 4th custom drag race champion. Nobody is coming out of this tournament undefeated, but Blue Line just keeps stacking up those victories. Now this is just a victory lap for Blue Line, trying to get a sweep if nothing else. And I believe Killer Kowalski, unless something changes here, will walk out of this tournament with the fastest time out of anybody. And yes, that is another victory for Dex Hendricks. That is a sweep along with the championship. So Dex Hendricks, Blue Line Racing, once again on top of the pedestal. People will have to see if they can take him out in the next tournament should Blue Line Racing choose to participate. Congratulations to Dex Hendricks. Thank you all so much for watching. See you for the next tournament.